Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And of course, one of those main issues as we add 2 billion new people to the planet by 2050 is how we're going to be able to provide the water that's going to be needed, and this goes to drinking water, but also the processes for business, industry, homes, all the other needs. And sitting right beside me is Meredith Upchurch. Her title is Low Impact Development Team Lead, LID, and this is part of the Washington District Department of Transportation, DDOT. And Meredith, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for inviting me to join you here tonight on the Emerald Planet TV.
Well, we love having you. The work you're doing is absolutely incredible, and as I do a lot of walking around the city of Washington, D.C., I see more and more of the work that's going on through DDOT and this green gardens, storm gardens, green infrastructure. It's very important what it is that you're doing, so we certainly appreciate and applaud what's going on. But tell us a little bit about what's the LID team, and then also a little bit about DDOT itself.
Okay, well, I'll start with talking about DDOT. DDOT is the Washington, D.C. District Department of Transportation. So we are the Department of Transportation within the city of Washington, D.C., also functioning as a state Department of Transportation. So we have to maintain all the roads, the bridges,
and that's a very complicated issue surrounding with the relationship with the Congress and all those other things we don't need to talk about, but yes, it is a very complicated relationship that you.
Washington, D.C. has a lot of people in governances who want to have a say, that's for sure. Yes. So DDOT being responsible for maintaining all of the travel infrastructure, the roads, the sidewalks, and such. There are many parts that go into making up a road. You know, you have the travel way where cars and buses travel. You have the sidewalks where people travel. You have street lights. Well, we think that having green part of those streets is also very important. Mm-hmm. So our team, the Low Impact Development Team, is a stormwater team that looks at how we can take care of the stormwater that's running off the road.
Mm-hmm. Look at these, we brought these slides, and these are very telling of what it is that you're doing, Meredith, but just give us a little idea of what's happening here and how the streets and the roads and the sidewalks all impact what it is that we're looking at.
Yeah, so what
we
we're
can tie this together as a package.
So what we're talking about is stormwater runoff. In Washington, D.C., we have a combined sewer system and a separated sewer system. And what happens in that separated area is water runs off of pavements and buildings, including the streets and sidewalks, and it goes into our streams and our rivers. And you can see this image shows a very degraded stream. So there's so much water as we've been building our cities over decades and centuries now, we're just sending more and more water into those streams, and it's really damaging the environment. It's damaging those streams. It's sending lots of trash. Mm-hmm. You can see here trash and pollutants. We have nitrogen and phosphorus.
Disgusting, actually. If we could bring that slide back up, I tell you, this is absolutely disgusting. And I've been out on these Clean the Anacostia River Day, and we picked up 2 3/4-ton pickup truck loads of trash, just like we see here.
So much trash, yes. So
where does all this come from?
It comes from us.
So it's the citizens of Washington, D.C. throwing their trash into the culverts, onto the street, and it washes right into the rivers.
People don't use trash cans; they just throw trash out their windows. So it ends up in our rivers. Mm-hmm. So we need to do things to fix that. So what we're talking about is trying to get to clean rivers here, mm-hmm. Trying to get to streams and rivers that we can swim and fish in. So the techniques that we're talking about, green infrastructure, are ways to mimic the natural landscape. You know, the natural landscape in a forest can provide services. It cleans the water, it cleans the air, it provides cooling effect. And so what we're trying to do is recreate that in a city.
So looking at this greenscape right here, tell us the elements of this. We can see the trees, the water, and the plants, but how does all this come together in this smallish space, but yet at the same time it has a profound impact on just so many aspects of the environment, correct?
It is. Streets are a very small space. You know, there's really not that much space between buildings. When you get into having travel lanes, you have a little bit of space between a sidewalk and a building. So what we're trying to do is use that space to add green. You know, people want to be in a place that has green, it has landscape. Streets with trees on them, the properties sell for higher values. And people just want to be there. That's where you want to live, that's where you want to work.
Yeah, they say the studies, I think, Meredith, and I think I was reading the book that you actually provided me, says that people will gravitate to this green street right here where you can have even higher end shops. On the next street, no trees. People stay away from it and go into this area.
That's absolutely true. The trees provide the shade where we want to be in a hot summer day. It's just something about it that lifts the human spirit. That's where we want to be. And so what we're doing with greening streets is using that landscape to actually work with the stormwater problem to capture the stormwater so that we can help clean up the rivers while we're creating nicer places to live, capturing that stormwater, taking the pollutants out, also cooling it, improving the air quality. All kinds of great benefits.
I mean, it's just so many benefits out of that. And of course, this actually right here really is to trap the water, sequester that, keep it in this area, and then gradually, as I understand it, release it either into the air, into the soil, or into the treatment system.
That's right. What we're looking at here is
complicated triad there. Right,
yeah,
Meredith?
what we're looking at here is called a bioretention system. We also call it a rain garden. So it's a planted area. It's lower than the street and the sidewalk, so it does capture the water. The water flows in, fills up. We have it planted so it looks just like a garden. It's a neighborhood amenity, but the water flows through the plants, through the mulch and soil layers and stone and into the underlying soil. So a lot of it stays out of the streams.
Right. And then you have a very different one. This is really beside a roadway and a parking area. So why would you have this versus this? Is there a particular
well, you're looking at
dynamic here?
Different seasons here. So
I see. Well,
one's in winter. This is a
Right.
winter shot. And this is a really interesting story. There was a terrible flooding problem at this location.
I see. Okay.
And we put in the rain gardens here to help deal with the flooding problem. So we solved the flooding problem, and we also have reduced the water and cleaned it up before it goes into the river.
Now, looking at this site right here, what would be the percentage of rain that goes and is trapped and then processed naturally through this? Is there any analysis that's been done about that?
So what we do is we design these to capture a little over an inch of stormwater runoff, an inch of rainfall. And an inch, it's actually 1.2 inches, is what 90% of the storms are that fall on Washington, D.C. So we're capturing 90% of that runoff.
My goodness, that's incredible.
Yeah, so about an inch of water over the road goes into these rain gardens, and that's what we keep out of the streams.
Now these are different materials and structures and layouts and all that. Just describe to us what we have here.
So what we're seeing here is different types of permeable pavements. So permeable pavements is another one of the techniques, in addition to bioretention, that we use to capture the stormwater runoff. And it's pavement, but the water can flow through it. So typical pavement you see on a road, a sidewalk, a parking lot has a tight surface on the top.
Yeah,
the water is it's impervious, right? The water is going to run right off. And that's by design, because historically we've wanted to get the water off of those surfaces.
It really was just shedding the water, right?
It
and
just
then
sheds
goes
the water,
into the
right.
drains, into the culverts, and then out into the tributaries. And now we're doing almost the exact reverse of that. Where
We are.
want
It's
to
a real
trap
change, yes.
and capture as much of that and put it in. And what does that do to the watershed itself and also the water table by having this kind of materials and then going back to these kinds of rain gardens?
So what we're trying to do is take an environment, a watershed, back to what it would have been in its natural conditions. You know, in an area where you have a forest, trees, grass, that most of that water, when it falls, it's going to soak into the ground or then evaporate into the sky. Very little of it will run off. But in the cities where it runs off, you know, we have much drastic numbers of amounts of rain that run off. So what we're trying to do is recreate those natural systems, the natural environments in the city.
And so through this very structured system that we're looking right here, complicated, engineered, but yet really you're trying to mimic what would be going on in a natural system
We are,
if it had never
yes.
been disturbed by humans in the beginning. Is that correct?
That's right, that's right. And in a city you have so much disturbed area, it's going to take a lot to get us back to nature.
Right.
But if we do it one site at a time, one street at a time, we'll gradually get there.
Now looking at this, what does this cost? We have about 2 minutes left, so what does it cost to put this in? And then how do you determine the cost-benefit analysis of going through this elaborate type of system?
So we don't have real firm cost numbers. We know that for the pavements example, for example, it costs 1.5 to 3 times what a typical pavement would cost. And when we're talking cost benefits, we usually measure in terms of cost per gallon stored or cost per area that you're capturing. And those numbers actually vary widely. But one thing about putting in a green street is you can compare it to putting in a standard street, and yes, it's going to cost more. Adding anything different will cost more. But what we're not looking at is on the end of the treatment, because when we send polluted water and trash into the rivers, well, it's not being treated.
Yeah, and it goes
down.
to degradation of the Chesapeake Bay,
That's
all the
right.
rivers. I mean, also we're losing good topsoil. We're not retaining the moisture, and because one of the things that we're facing with, Meredith, is the world is drying out. If you look at the western part of the United States, the whole country of Australia, China, India, some of these massive countries with not Australia necessarily, but a large population basis, and they're just running out of potable water. And so what you're doing here is through this very clever system is actually capturing it, but in an area that goes in to replenish.
That's
the soil.
right, that's right.
Okay. Well, looking at this, we're out of time. What do you see as far as the future, next 5, 10 years? as far
I
as
think
what
we're
you're
going to
doing?
continue to build green. It's definitely the movement, the trend nationwide and worldwide. Every other city I talk to is doing it or starting to do it, so it's just going to grow from here.
And we want to talk with you about how you're going to be doing all that too. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
Here, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read. and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are going to be used by a planet that will have some 9 billion souls on it by 2050. And so as we look at the food, the fuel, the fiber, the basic infrastructure, how are we going to be able to provide the water at the same time to protect the environment? And we think about water and the retention of water and providing that to humankind all across the planet. At the same time, we want to be sure to protect the air and the soil. And so I have someone sitting right beside me that's actually an expert in doing all this and is providing very positive leadership to what's called DDOT. This is the Washington District Department of Transportation. This is Meredith Upchurch. She is the Low Impact Development LID team. I like this LID part. Team lead. So anyway, Meredith, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Oh, thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me today.
Glad to have you here. And we talk about DDOT. This is the Department of Transportation. They're supposed to be building roads and bike trails and, you know, letting people flow to and from and commerce and keeping people, you know, doing their work and entertainment and all that. And right in the middle of all this, you're saying, hey, we're going to put some rain gardens and we're going to grow trees and we're going to have lots of grass and all these other kinds of things. So what's this juxtaposition between DDOT, and if you'll explain what DDOT really is, and trying to make all this much more green?
Well, DDOT is the Department of Transportation within the city of Washington, D.C. So we are responsible for all the infrastructure that a DOT, you know, has to deal with and make sure is functioning. What's interesting about Washington, D.C. is actually the roads were laid out as a part of the park system. So
That's incredible. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That goes all the way back to LaFont.
Yeah. So,
That's incredible.
So street trees have always been a part of the street layout, and part of the street area is actually supposed to be parkland between the sidewalk and buildings. That's called the public parking area, and it's not because you're going to park cars there. It's because it's a park.
So a real park, P-A-R-K, is going to be there.
Yeah. So
now,
so
let me ask a question in all this. In this greening and going to this park, because this is exciting, I didn't realize this, but you have the grass and you have the trees. What percentage of canopy, meaning the trees that cover the streets and also the sidewalks and even the front yards of many homes, how much of that do we have? What's ideal, and where are you going as far as DDOT is concerned in that whole effort?
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to give you the exact numbers. I don't have those off the top of my head. But the current DC tree canopy is about in the 30% range.
Oh, really? I thought it was higher than that.
And the target is for 40%. Yeah, so part of greening the streets is increasing the tree canopy. So one thing we're doing is trying to make the street trees that live in the city grow bigger and grow longer. There's this typical saying that street trees only grow 7 to 10 years and then they die in a city because they don't have enough room to grow. So part of our Greening Streets initiative is actually to make better growing conditions for the trees.
So like this streetscape that we have right here, we see this is a fairly new area, but what you're doing, and then you have this degree of separation. Tell us what we're looking at here. Now we know this is actually a park, and this is all part of the original plan of DC, and you're now, in essence, going back to the original, right, Meredith?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, tell us what's this degree of separation we're seeing here?
So we have in the sidewalk area, as we would call it, we have a street tree zone where we want to grow our trees to give our canopy over the sidewalks and buildings and roads so that we can get that nice cooling effect. We have sidewalks where people are going to pass through. And we have, in this case, we have a rain garden area where water comes from the street into the rain garden to be captured and cleaned up.
Now, looking at this as a classical street, we've seen this image once before, but really the park area, I think, is where the cars are actually setting, and then the streetscape and the rain garden part is in the center. So why this separation and dedicating this much space to the rain garden part? What is this doing? How is this functioning? Because this is almost like a lung, right? As far as the water and the air and the soil.
It is, yeah. In this particular case, the rain garden is behind the sidewalk, but often it's next to the sidewalk.
I see.
Taking in that water from the street. There's channels that take the water from the street into that rain garden.
So this is all part of the design then?
Yeah, you'll see different designs. This is a permeable sidewalk. You can see in the front part of the image where the permeable sidewalk appears to be dry. This is during a rainstorm, but in the back of the image, that's a standard pavement sidewalk where the water is ponding.
Now, looking at this permeable sidewalk, what type of material is this, and is there anything there besides just the surface of the sidewalk itself?
Yeah, so all permeable pavements, they can be made in the same thing that standard pavements are: concrete, asphalt, concrete blocks. This particular image is a concrete sidewalk, so it's the same materials that we use in standard paving. They just are put together a little differently. They have a little less fine so that the water can flow through, and then underneath is a base of stone to hold that water.
And so this is a similar kind, different material, but I guess this is a similar kind of thing. So there's some kind of underlayment under this, and how deep would that be, and how much moisture can you actually capture as far as what we're looking at these paving bricks?
Yeah, so these paving bricks, as you call them, they have gaps between them, so the water flows through them. We go down about 3 to 4 feet. We dig out.
My goodness.
Yes.
So it's like almost like a channel then for all this moisture.
It is, yeah, and we can hold more than 3 inches of water that would fall on there in that stone that's underneath the pavement.
That is
so
incredible.
we can really capture some really high rainstorms.
So when we're walking on this, we're actually walking on a very sophisticated engineered system.
Very much
to
so,
capture the moisture. And then what we want to do is, like in this situation here, what do we want that water to do then? Okay, we've captured it, now what?
We want it to go through that pavement and soak right into the ground. We do have some backup drainage systems in case it can't do that, but we look at the soils to see how the water can flow into it because we want to keep it out of the system. We want it to go back into the ground, like in a forest, where when water falls on the ground, it soaks in, very little runs off. That's what we're trying to mimic with these pavements, have the water soak into the ground so that very little runs off.
So looking at this, we're talking about the park system of Washington, D.C., which is, it's a very clever idea going back, hundreds of years. Now we're going back to that. So is all this water we're now captured within this, I guess, a roadbed, then what we want that to do then is to go underground out to the trees and the plants, and that then affects the air and the soil quality. What are you seeing as far as the benefit of this? Not just in terms of dollars and cents, but as far as the livability of the city, because that's what you're really after, Meredith, I believe, is livability, correct?
That is correct, yes. So the systems we're building here, green infrastructure, it's a way to add the green component to the city. There's so many benefits in addition to the environmental benefits, which are capturing the water, cleaning the air, cooling our cities. They actually are provided these green areas where it's much more desirable for people to live. Areas with green infrastructure command higher property values. People want to shop there, to live there, to be there, to recreate there. So it's all about livability in places where people want to be.
Now, looking at the snow scene, I guess this really, we have to admit that this really is Washington, D.C., and we've been having some snow throughout this time. But actually, you're putting this slide in here for a very different reason. What is happening as we're looking at
Yeah,
this?
so what this slide shows actually is one area of permeable pavement in the front part of the image and an area of standard pavement towards the back. And if you can see a line in there, what you see is, excuse me, that's reversed. The area in the front is the non-permeable because it's icing. And the area in the back is the permeable where it's not icing. So what we're finding is with the permeable pavements, it's a safety issue too. It provides us a safety benefit. Because that water can soak in, it doesn't freeze.
So looking at this, so really again going back to this engineered system, but really it's engineered for the earth, the environment, but at the same time for the health and safety and welfare of the public. So in the back of this thing, that's actually, like you're saying, goes down 3 or 4 feet. It's trapping all this moisture, but it's allowing the snow to gently melt and go in instead of like in the front where it's icing, and then if you get more snow or rain on this, it just runs right off into the tributaries. Is that what we're understanding about this?
Yes.
This is incredible because I do a lot of walking and I use the alleyways for, take the dogs out. And this is interesting to know. So looking at this here, we see the wet street, and then what's actually going on, but relate it back to these slides that we had here. What's going on in this whole mix?
Yeah, so what you're seeing with the wet area there, that's a rain garden. Technical term is bioretention area. And it's a planted area. This one's in winter, so you're not seeing all the full lush vegetation that you would in the growing seasons, but it's doing its job. It's taking water off the street, and it's keeping it out of the stream. So
now
it's holding that water.
We see few green plants in this. The very first one we had when we first started talking about this, just so many plants. So what is the difference? Why in one there's more plants and others there's less?
Yeah, some of that's just design or season. In this case, winter, we didn't see the full growth, but they all are designed to be lushly planted and a visual enhancement to them.
Now this is going to be about the last slide we're going to get to. So what are the benefits of everything we're seeing here, Meredith, and then I'm going to just end up where you see the city going over the next 5, 10, or 15 years, but what's happening in this whole dynamic? Because this really is a compilation of everything we've seen before.
Yeah, so this is showing an illustration of both above ground and below ground and where the water's going. It's flowing off the road and the sidewalk, flowing into our rain garden here that's planted, soaking down through the soil, through layers of plants and soil and stone, and going into the existing soil. So we keep it out of our streams, which can lead to healthier streams, and we clean it up. We clean out the pollutants.
So what you have then, you have a tiny pipe instead of these huge culverts down there, and what you want to do is retain, I think you're saying about 90% of this process.
We want to retain as much as we can.
And then just put the minimum out into the streams themselves.
Yeah, the pipes are just backups.
This is a beautiful scene. Where are you going the next 5, 10, 15 years? We got to be quick.
So our goal here is to clean up the rivers. We want to make the rivers a place we want to be, a place we can swim and fish, and so green streets are a way to get us there, create livability, and clean up our rivers.
And want people to be out on the streets. This is fantastic. Meredith Upchurch, Low Impact Development Team Leader, Washington District Department of Transportation. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet. As we're looking around the globe in 144 different nations, look for those best practices, as we call the best of the best. It's going to be dealing with providing a higher quality of life for a planet that will have about 9 billion souls by 2050. And one of those issues, of course, is water. How are we going to be able to provide water on a planet that's 2/3 covered, or more than that, almost 3/4 covered by water, but only about 1 to 2% of that is actually can be soon consumed by human beings, their pets, and animals. And so we have someone sitting right beside me who's been thinking about this for a long time, doing absolutely great work. Bethany Bizak, who is a professional engineer. Also, she is a lead AP certified and is the manager for green infrastructure. Yes. I love this title, and that's why she's here. And she's with DC Water, which is the largest water treatment facility on the planet, and I can tell that because I've been to China and India and many other places, and this is a phenomenal place. So Bethany, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
And we're going to, usually we don't do this, Bethany, but you did such a fantastic job with these images. We're just going to kind of march through these, talk about these, and talk about green infrastructure.
Okay.
But introduce Blue Plains, is what we call it locally, but DC Water, a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about green infrastructure and go through these images and just kind of let you talk about it, okay?
Okay, great.
Super.
So DC Water provides retail water and wastewater services to the District of Columbia. As you mentioned, we also operate the world's largest advanced wastewater treatment facility with an average daily capacity of 375 million gallons. So it's quite a large facility.
That's a lot of water.
Yes, absolutely, on a daily basis.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And we also provide services for not only the District of Columbia, but the plant also treats wastewater coming from several counties in Virginia and also in Maryland.
Yeah, it's a regional facility,
yes,
and
right.
it's a capital district. But looking at this, we have this very nice green image, and then we have this dark gray one over on my right-hand side, and probably the left is the viewing audience. Tell us about the difference between this, and then weave in your narrative of green infrastructure, how it started, and what is green infrastructure.
Okay, sure. So what you see on these two images is really a contrast of the natural environment and what happens when it rains in a natural environment versus what happens in a city environment where we've paved over a lot of the pervious surfaces and we've turned them to impervious surfaces. So in a natural environment, what happens is you have precipitation that comes down as either rain or snow. Much of it actually infiltrates down into the ground as either shallow or deep infiltration contributes to the water table. Very little of it actually runs off. Now, in a built environment, what happens is we pave over all those pervious surfaces, we turn them to impervious surfaces, greatly increasing the amount of runoff that we have and reducing the amount of infiltration that we have. Yeah. And it causes, significant problems not only for our streams, but also for our infrastructure. And as far as DC Water is concerned, that's one of the main problems that we have is really all of that water contributing to our infrastructure.
Now, one of the questions, of course, is this combined sewer system versus the separated. So what is a combined sewer system? And then what is the difference of the other?
Sure. So in a combined sewer system, what you have is you have a single pipe that manages both the stormwater and wastewater coming from homes and businesses. In a separate sewer system, what you have is two pipes, a single pipe that carries the stormwater and then a single pipe that carries the wastewater. And the reason that that's such a problem really for all the cities that have CSOs, as we term it to be, is they basically can become overwhelmed in large storm events. And the infrastructure simply cannot handle the volume of water that's contributing to those systems. And they're built and designed to actually overflow into the district's waterways. And DC is not unique, certainly, in this problem. Over 770 cities across the nation actually have CSO systems, and all of us are working to try and solve this problem.
And there are very old systems. You know, some of
Yes.
these go back to several hundred years,
Right.
200 to 300 years actually on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at this, and so you have in essence, the tons of water you're processing on a day. And then when you add the stormwater to it, what is that doing to the system itself?
Right. So
and the amount of extra water coming in from the storms.
basically, you have a pipe that the capacity of the pipe is exceeded. And so it just simply cannot handle the amount of flow that's being conveyed through it, and it discharges directly into our waterways. And so you have diluted sewage that's going into the three main water bodies in DC. So that's the Potomac River, the Anacostia River, and Rock Creek.
And I was going to say also too, at that time you're really putting raw sewage into the water, which then needs to be addressed as either right here or further downstream as far as the drinking water is concerned, because a lot of our water comes out of this surface area. So looking at this map here, this is part of about DC water, so tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So basically the central third of DC, that salmon colored area, is the combined sewer system for DC. It tends to be the older portions of DC because when DC was built, that was the technology of the time, was to build these CSO systems. The rest of the non-shaded area of DC is a separate system. So again, that's two pipes that are, each one is conveying the stormwater and one is conveying wastewater.
Okay. And so looking at these two, so in other words, DC has been improving over time, as most cities in the United States and around the globe. But we have to address these older areas because this is the heavy concentration of population, correct?
Right, right.
Yeah. Okay.
And so this image here actually shows the DC Clean Rivers Project. So the DC Clean Rivers Project is the department within DC Water that implements our long-term control plan. It's a federally mandated program, and it's a 20-year program. $2.6 billion is what DC Water is investing to solve this CSO
That's real
problem.
money, $2.6 billion US dollars.
Yes,
That's an
absolutely.
incredible amount of money.
Yes, yes. And so it's a massive problem, but it's a massive program to actually solve that problem. And so what you see here on the slide is the current DC Clean Rivers Project. We're actively tunneling, starting at the bottom portion of DC at the Blue Plains Advanced Wastewater Treatment Plant. We're tunneling down about 100 to 150 feet below the ground, and we're building large storage and conveyance tunnels to handle these CSO flow events. And so we're actively tunneling. This slide here shows you the tunneling that's happening at Blue Plains right now. And we have a very large tunnel segment proposed, and we're building for the Anacostia River. And then we also have two other tunnels, one along the Potomac River and one for Rock Creek.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this tunneling equipment, because this is a huge piece of equipment.
It is,
and
yes.
very expensive.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a massive piece of machinery, and basically what you see there is you have a crane at the surface, and it's actually lowering a portion of that tunneling equipment down into the shaft there. And it's all assembled below the ground, and it's over a football field in length when it's all put together.
Oh my gosh, that's absolutely incredible. All right, going to this, what are we looking at here as far as the impacts of all this?
Sure. So this really shows you the magnitude of the problem, but then also, you know, really the opportunities of what the Clean Rivers Project is really seeking to really solve here. So at the beginning of our project, there was over 3 billion gallons of this CSO sewage going into our waterways. And at the end of our program, we'll have a 96% reduction in volume of those CSOs after the 20 years after we're complete with our program. The vast majority of that flow is going to the Anacostia River, and the Anacostia tends to be very impacted because of all that volume of CSO discharge that's going into the river, and it's also a slower moving body of water, so it tends to be more environmentally impacted.
Well, looking at the Anacostia too, I mean, when the settlers first came here, it was about a 28-foot draft. Now it's about 2 foot. And so a lot of that's just pure sewage and, of course, water that's run off from both the cities and also from the country areas. And so it's a tremendous negative impact on this body of water. And so what you're doing now, Bethany, is actually trying to revert back to what it was, you know, several hundred years ago.
Right, exactly.
So looking at this, these are the systems that you're putting in right now. If we can bring the slide back up so we can talk about this tunneling system, and what are we looking at here as far as management of the water and also capturing the storm water?
Yes, so DC Water has proposed to modify our long-term control plan, our DC Clean Rivers project, and implement green infrastructure. You know, the tunnels do a fantastic job of managing the volume of the CSOs that we can have in DC. But because the infrastructure is below the ground, we really are not providing any other amenities or benefits to the district's residents and communities. And so ever since 2011, DC Water has really evaluated, we've modeled, we've assessed the performance and the possibility of implementing green infrastructure. And so we came out with a proposal early last year to implement $90 million of green infrastructure. And you know, that really includes several different types of green infrastructure. Meredith did a great job talking about some of those earlier. But this slide here shows several different types of bioretention. So you can have a very urban condition where it's literally right off the curb and there's an inlet into the facility, or you can have a much more park-like setting where it's grassed around the edges. It can take on various different forms of bioretention.
And referring to Meredith, she is Meredith Upchurch, who is the Low Impact Development Team Leader for DDOT. This is the District Department of Transportation. Looking at this, this green modeling that you have here, tell us a little a bit about the differences between the two of these. Are they capturing the same amount of water, or do they have the same impact on the environment? Are these actually in specialized area and they're serving special needs?
So both of these facilities really function in a very similar capacity. Basically, they accept stormwater off of the right-of-way surfaces. They treat that stormwater. It's cooled as well, coming off of all those impervious surfaces. And it's filtered through an engineered media. It's an organic, sandy mix of material that provides that filtering capacity, but they're providing very similar benefits, just in a different type of setting.
I tell you, this is really lovely what you're doing here, and very attractive, and really provides a whole new park setting, a whole new open space, and also one of these, or maybe both of these, are actually on roofs, correct?
Yes, yes, they absolutely are.
This looks like something at the ground level, but this really is a green roof.
Yes, it's a bit deceptive there. On the image on the right, you actually see that's RFK Stadium, for those of you who are familiar with DC. So it gives you a bit of perspective that it is on a roof. But we have implemented green infrastructure at DC Water facilities, and these are 2 green roofs that we've implemented.
Okay, we're going to leave it this. Where are you going over the next 5, 10, and 15 years, Bethany, as far as, you know, advancing this green infrastructure?
Sure. So as soon as we have a finalized consent decree modification, we'll go right into design and outreach of all of our projects and really be implementing that $90 million of GI.
Well, thank you for being with us, Bethany Bizak of DC Water, as we create the Emerald Planet.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches, don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire!
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
more time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent. Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. We come to you on a weekly basis bringing you the best of the best practices that we can identify in 144 different nations and what we call the 1,000 best practices. And so as we look around the globe, we're looking at how we're going to be able to accommodate a planet of 9 billion souls by 2050. And one of those areas, of course, is water. So we'd like to thank you for being with us on this particular program. And sitting right beside me is Bethany Bezak. She is a professional engineer, lead AP certified and green infrastructure manager at DC Water, which is called Blue Plains here. And Bethany, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is really exciting things, you know, as far as improving the lifestyle, the quality of living and everything in Washington, D.C. But also, too, is actually you've become a model for everything that's going on in this green infrastructure development, you know, to many other cities. You know, we've had Chinese delegations come over. You've had many other nations. So tell us a little bit about DC Water, but why green infrastructure? What is that doing? You know, this is almost a $7 billion operation, and now we're really focused on green infrastructure. How does all that fit together?
Sure. So really the value of the green infrastructure is that it can provide triple bottom line benefits, as we consider them, to the community.
And the triple bottom line is?
Yes. And so that represents environmental benefits, social benefits, and economic benefits. Previously I mentioned that we're implementing large storage and conveyance tunnels to manage our CSO problem. But we're really interested in pursuing the green infrastructure because it provides these additional benefits to the community and district residents. You know, from an environmental perspective, not only can we manage the stormwater from a quality side, but we can also improve the tree canopy, cool our city, and the warm summer temperatures can be decreased. There are many other environmental benefits. On the social side, we really can provide additional green space for people to get out and enjoy recreational activities. And then on the economic side, there's a real opportunity here to support local green jobs for not only the construction, but also the maintenance of GI.
Right. Looking at this, I know these are some of the extra projects that are going on in the activity. And so tell us a little bit about this and about the project, the overall development that's going on right now. And understand this is actually going to go on for years into the future.
Yes, so the overall program is actually a 20-year program.
That's incredible. Yeah,
yes.
2 decades.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
And that's one of the real joys of working on a program like this, is there really is a long-term impact to the work that we're doing. And so not only has DC Water proposed this $90 million investment in green infrastructure, but we haven't stopped there. We've really pursued several other projects in the interim while we're working on finalizing our modification. And that includes work with sister agencies, work at several of DC Water facilities as well, and also hosting a green infrastructure challenge.
Well, looking at this, tell us a little bit about these. These are small images here, but what's some of the activity that's going on?
Yes, so as I mentioned, we work with our sister agencies, so the District Department of Transportation and the Urban Forestry Administration, we work with them on planting trees to improve tree canopy in DC. We've also built several projects at DC water facilities to reduce our overall footprint and reduce the impervious surface that we have at our facilities. I mentioned that we've hosted a Green Infrastructure Challenge. And the real goal of that was to really push the state of the art of green infrastructure, provide really innovative solutions, challenge the design community to give us the best that they have out there. So a lot of really interesting things that we've done.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. And tell us about this. This is just absolutely amazing what is going on here. And actually, how far up is this?
Yeah, so that's a two-story building. It is a green roof that we installed at Eastside Pumping Station. So that's a sewer pumping station just adjacent to RFK Stadium. And it's a green roof that we implemented there. You can see that just after 1 year of growth, it really has some great coverage on it.
Yeah, and this is amazing. And what are the benefits of a green roof? This is something that Washington, D.C. has one of the highest concentrations of green roofs, and yet we have millions of square foot that can be actually converted. What are some of the benefits of this?
Yes, that's a great question. So not only can it manage stormwater, it can also cool the roof surface. So it actually lowers the heating demand in the winter and lowers the cooling demand in the summer. It also can protect the waterproofing membrane so that it doesn't need to be replaced as frequently because there's all this growth and media that's built on top of it.
And the whole thing about this, people think about, all these green things are being much more expensive. Actually, you can save money by doing this and yet increase the quality of living.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what it's all about. Okay, let's just go on through. This is exciting, so we're just going to talk about all these different things that are here.
Okay, so this is a photo of another green roof that we built on top of Fort Reno Reservoir. So it's a drinking water reservoir that has a cover on top of it. It used to be 100% impervious, and it's about an acre in size, so just over 42,000 square feet of surface that we converted from impervious surface to pervious surface.
So you're actually capturing the water and then being able to, instead of having to pump this from someplace else, is actually capture this water and retain it right there?
So yes, we're able to capture the stormwater, and instead of having it drain off the roof and go into our sewer system, it's 90% of the storms are actually maintained or retained on site.
That's incredible. Okay, let's just go through some of these.
Sure.
I like this.
So this is another site that we installed both a bioretention, and the photo that you have here is some pervious pavers at Anacostia Water Pumping Station. So this is a potable water pumping station, and you can see in the parking spaces that we installed these pavers. Basically, the pavers allow for water to infiltrate down to a storage rock aggregate layer below the pavement surface, and the stormwater is managed through that practice. And then the last one that we have here is another project that we implemented in the Bloomingdale, LaDroit Park neighborhoods in DC to really help for flood mitigation benefits. That neighborhood has seen some very significant flooding events in the past several years, and really over the past 100 years or so it has as well. And so bioretention was installed in those neighborhoods to try and manage the flooding that they have experienced.
So I'm a citizen, this is going on around me, I see people moving in, big trucks, all of a sudden plants start showing up and we see earth moving out, earth moving in. And then what should I think about that? What benefits as a property owner would I have in this particular situation here as far as the property values and the long-term livability of this particular housing area?
Sure. So there are a lot of studies that really show that there can be improved livability in cities by greening areas that weren't green before. And so that's what we've done here with this bioretention. As you mentioned, some studies actually show that there can be increased property values because you're providing amenities to the citizens.
Yeah, and this is continuing on, so this gives you a very different look of different materials and different ways of treating this area. So what are we seeing here, and why would we use different medium and different styles as far as around these urban areas.
So I really included this slide here because I wanted to highlight the fact that DC Water takes the maintenance as a very serious consideration for green infrastructure. In order to maintain the long-term performance of these facilities, we really need to maintain them, and DC Water looks at them as assets no different than our water and sewer infrastructure. And so we've developed maintenance frequencies for all of our green infrastructure. And these are just some examples of the things that DC Water looks for when we're maintaining the facilities.
Now looking at this actually looks like a snake.
Yes.
It's right in the center of this whole thing.
Yes.
Now, why would I love to have a snake going through my bioretention?
So that's actually the green roof at Fort Reno. At the very beginning when the green roof was planted, the crows were very curious about the new surface on the green roof. And so they would just gather on the green roof and pull up our plants. And so it's a way to actually scare them away and help us get those plants established. Once the plants are established, the crows are less curious and they're not able to pull the plants up as
do
easily.
we remove the snake?
Yes,
oh,
at that
okay,
point then
good.
we do, yes.
Then I don't feel bad walking up there.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
And what's going on here? I know this is something where you're actually training people in the community. Tell us about that, and how do you actually involve the schools and the communities of faith and the citizens within these neighborhoods to be a part of what DC Water is actually doing and feel like that they're a part of this whole process?
Right. So I mentioned that really the maintenance component is so critical to long-term performance of GI. Because of that, DC Water partnered with a local nonprofit, DC Greenworks. And we hosted a pilot green roof maintenance training program last year where we had just under 10 young adults go through this program and learn about how to maintain green roofs. And the real benefit there is that you're providing local green jobs to residents in DC. And then for DC Water, we have maintained facilities that will have long-term performance. So it's just a really great partnership with DC Greenworks on this pilot program.
And many of these are coming out of marginalized or at-risk neighborhoods. And so what are we putting into these neighborhoods that's going to have a benefit long-term, not only just the green jobs aspect of it, but appreciation for the neighborhood, appreciation for what we need to do to protect the environment. How does all this fit together as far as people, in many cases, we would never think of that would be involved or care about the environment, but actually really do. In some cases, they're more interested in the environment.
Well, that really goes to this outreach component of the green infrastructure. That's such a critical component to the success, the long-term success of these projects. You really need to get into the communities and the neighborhoods and help people understand what the overall program is about, what the goals are, and then how they can become a part of it. We want people to feel empowered to be part of the program and to really embrace the goals that we have.
Now, looking at this too, you have many different activities going on here, so it's recreational, but also at the same time protecting the environment. Looking at the cost-benefit analysis, and this is really going to be about the last question. We'll have one more, but we need to get out of here quick. Tell us the cost-benefit analysis of what we see right here with the neighborhood and also this mix of activities.
So when we're looking at the green infrastructure, we're really looking not only at, from DC Water's perspective, that volume control, but also these triple bottom line benefits. And so what we do is we try to quantify to the best of our ability the environmental, social, and economic benefits that are in addition to meeting the DC Clean Rivers Project program goals.
That's absolutely fantastic, and you are exactly on time, so this is absolutely fantastic. So Bethany Bezak, who is a professional engineer, lead AP, Green Infrastructure Manager at DC Water, thank you for being with us and sharing all this excellent information. And thank you, viewers, for watching this particular program. This is something that will be coming to your neighborhood and a neighborhood near you. And we really appreciate it. And Bethany, thank you very much for being here. It's wonderful the work you're doing. We're very proud of you and DC Water as we create the Emerald Planet.